The Relic project is a creation of Ford Chicago. A relic is an object, custom, or belief that survives from an earlier time. They are often historic and hold sentimental value. The Relic project has two main purposes. The first is to help everyone understand the origins of relics, and the second is to illuminate our core beliefs in the hope of expanding the kingdom in the 21st century. The Relic project comes with 10 distinct titles, and we hope you'll take the time to watch them all.
20th century Eastern Orthodox priest who once said, in the process of replacing the old religions, Christianity made a new one. Ancient Judaism was centered on three elements: the temple, the priesthood, and the sacrifice. And when Jesus showed up on the scene, he ended all three, fulfilling them in himself. He is the temple who embodies a new house made with living stones. He is the new priest who established the priesthood of all believers. It was he who was the perfect sacrifice for all of our sins and the redemption of the entire world through his death and rising again. In the minds of the early Christians, it was the people, not the buildings, that constituted the sacred. The early Christians understood that they themselves corporately were the temple of God and the house of God. The scriptures for them no longer spoke of needing a sacred space. It wasn't about a building. It was about a group of people. It was all of them gathered together. They were the new temple. Jesus being with them, among them, existing in their living rooms and in their kitchens. This was Christianity at its finest. It was the only religion without sacred objects or sacred space or even sacred persons in leadership. It was Jesus at the head, and no one could sit in his place. It's so interesting to think about that today with all the different hierarchies within the different understandings of Christianity. I find it absolutely disheartening when I think of times when there have been people who said you've desecrated the temple of God. What they were talking about is a American Christian church building. And it just shows me that many people don't know their own heritage. They don't understand that the building is not the church. That whole concept came around the 3rd and 4th century when Constantine tried to legitimize the church by offering it buildings, building 9 different basilicas in different parts of the world in the Roman Empire, saying Christianity was on par with Judaism and paganism. It was Constantine who said, no, Christianity is as good as these other religions. In today's terminology, it might be always lead to heaven. Even though he would say he was a Christian, he killed most of his family at one point, and he used a lot of worship from pagan gods to the sun in some of the imagery that we have from the period of time when he was emperor. I would say he was probably a dualist. Now, thank God, if he's in heaven or not isn't my role. That's above my pay grade. But he alone, in his effort to legitimize the church, created something that would go on for years. People would say the church is the buildings. And we would see this escalate over time. Around 1000 AD is when the pew came into being. That bane of anyone's existence when they sit and listen to a sermon that's gone too long or a musical that is just boring to tears. It was up until that point people stood for the entire service, which I think at some point might have moved things along a little faster than sometimes we have today in the modern church. Needless to say, that would get modified around the 18th century. Did you know there was once pew boxes? That's right. People would buy a box and give the church money, and they would decorate their box. It was their seat in the church. Put on some carpet, maybe some lounge chairs. I don't know. It's just crazy stuff that would happen. In the process, people became so attached to the building that they forgot about the movement of God. They became so complacent in the place of God that they forgot that the movement of God is just that. It's a movement in which people are called to be sent out into the world. Mission and missionary, the term literally means to be sent into the world. And somehow we started being about the place. It's a misunderstanding of what it means to be a movement of God. Buildings, in and of themselves, are, well, relics. Relics of a past era that maybe we ought to rethink these days. As we see the decline of the church, of the people who believe, maybe we ought to get back to the understanding that the church isn't about the building. Sure, we need buildings to facilitate the movement of God, the gathering of God, but maybe we don't need to own them. Maybe we just need places in which we can worship together freely and then use all of those resources to move the kingdom forward that we would have spent on a building of sorts. It's an interesting idea. I hope you'll take some time and discuss it.